Being a samurai was one of the most revered positions in feudal Japan. But what was it actually like to be one of these elite warriors? Let's find out. The Japanese word samurai means literally one who serves. They were the military nobility of the country, functioning much like European knights in medieval times. During their peak in the 1600s, they were the embodiment of Bushido, the way of the warrior, which was built around several key pillars: frugality, righteousness, benevolence, respect, sincerity, courage, honor, loyalty, self-control, and even death. Now let us take a look at what it was like for a samurai to live by those rules. We all know that samurai were fierce warriors. What may be less known is that they were also highly educated men. Before becoming an adult and assuming his adult name, a young samurai studied hard with the help of a tutor or an uncle. He would learn archery, swordsmanship, and other martial arts, but he would also study poetry, calligraphy, painting, and music. Being a well-rounded individual was extremely important. What's more, despite the belief that samurai only ate meat, their diet consisted mostly of rice, fish, and vegetables. Meat was eaten only on special occasions. Now, don't get me wrong, there were plenty of opportunities for them to enjoy meat. Samurai feasts could consist of up to 21 different dishes, including grilled eel, boiled tender pork belly, and even turtle soup. However, such delicacies were reserved for important guests and major royal ceremonies. Most of the time, samurai meals consisted of rice, pickled vegetables, fish, and miso soup. This is not to say that they didn't enjoy their food. In fact, eating was considered a great pleasure for them. There are numerous references in literature about how much samurai enjoyed eating rice and drinking sake. The famous 47 Ronin were said to have feasted before they left for their revenge mission. In terms of their clothing, samurai followed the trends of the time, just like everyone else. However, they did add some practicality to their outfits due to their profession. Men wore long, wide-sleeved robes called kimono, which were made from silk or cotton. Their footwear consisted of geta sandals, which had a raised wooden sole. Kimono were not only worn by men, but also by women. However, female attire had more restrictions placed upon it. For example, a married woman could not wear silk or carry an umbrella over her head. Also, her fingernails had to be kept short, while her neck, arms, and face remained covered. Now, if you've ever watched any movie about the samurai, then you know that they always seem to be dusting off their armor and polishing their swords. And there's a reason for that. Armor maintenance was an important part of a samurai's duty. Not only did it show their dedication to their craft, but it also demonstrated their status and wealth. The higher the rank, the fancier the armor. Samurai armor was made from lacquered leather and iron plates. These were usually given to them by the shogun, and they were forbidden from selling them or even lending them to others. If they had to travel light, they would dismantle their armor and pack it separately. Some samurai would even have their armor passed down through generations. So proper care had to be taken. The same went for their weapons. Swords were seen as extensions of the samurai's soul. That meant they weren't just tools, but companions. They would polish and clean their blades regularly, sometimes even talking to them in a respectful manner. Now, we've mentioned the shogun, but what about the daily life of an average samurai? Well, they had two main duties. The first one was working on the lord's estate, which might include agricultural work, road maintenance, or even working in the lord's household. The second duty was military training. A samurai had to be ready to go to war at all times, so practicing their fighting skills was of utmost importance. When they weren't working or training, they would meet with friends, drink sake, and enjoy geisha entertainment. Much like the European knights, they had a strict code of conduct outside of battle as well. Bushido dictated how they should behave, and violating that code could bring shame upon not only themselves, but also their family and lord. One of the aspects of the Bushido code was that a samurai was expected to commit seppuku when he brought shame upon himself or his lord. Seppuku, also known as harakiri, was a form of a ritual suicide. It was performed by a samurai to atone for a perceived failure or wrongdoing. This practice was deeply ingrained in the samurai culture, emphasizing their unwavering commitment to honor and their desire to avoid being a burden to their family, clan, or lord. When committing seppuku, a samurai would use a dagger called a tanta to disembowel himself. Usually a second was present to end the samurai's life quickly after he inflicted the wound. Seppuku was not necessarily a punishment handed out by the lord, but it was something a samurai would do on his own accord. Now, the world of the samurai was very brutal, even by today's standards. Torture was commonplace during the Sengoku period, which lasted from 1467 to 1603. Warring states were trying to expand their territory and secure their borders, so torture was used as a tool to extract information or gain a strategic advantage. One of the most common methods of torture was crucifixion. Samurai would often crucify their enemies, leaving them to die slowly from their wounds or from exhaustion. Sometimes they would leave the crucified samurai out in the sun for days, turning their flesh into a crispy snack for birds and insects. Even the family members of the enemy samurai would not be spared, which is why the head of a family was usually the one to perform seppuku when they were caught. Another method was placing a rock or a metal bar across a person's chest and then slowly crushing them. Another thing samurai liked to do was skin their enemies alive, either to scare the rest of the population or as a warning to future would-be rebels. Sometimes samurai would receive orders to report to the palace and stay there until further notice. This was usually done to keep them away from their home territory so they would end cause any trouble. While staying at the palace, the samurai were forbidden from leaving their rooms, so they would spend their time writing poetry and scrolls. This was called shitai, and it was usually done as a form of punishment. Once the guilty samurai received a pardon, they would usually be sent back to their province to live out the rest of their days. One of the strangest things about samurai culture was their love for gold. Gold was seen as the ultimate symbol of wealth and power, and samurai were always looking for ways to acquire more of it. This led to a strange phenomenon called kanpira, where samurai would put gold coins inside wooden or metal boxes and then bury them in the ground. They believed that this would somehow increase their fortune. Kanpira was a common practice among lower-ranking samurai who were always struggling to make ends meet. They would often take loans from merchants, promising to pay them back with interest. With the money, they would buy gold coins and hide them away. Unfortunately, this scheme rarely worked, and many samurai ended up in debt or even bankruptcy. The worst part was that they couldn't even use the coins to buy necessities like food or clothing, so they were truly stuck in a never-ending cycle of poverty. There's no doubt that the life of a samurai was a difficult one. They had to be prepared to fight at all times, and they lived by a strict code of conduct. However, despite the hardships, being a samurai was considered a great honor in feudal Japan. And now it's time for you to tell us what you thought about this video. Do you admire the samurai for their dedication to their craft, or maybe you think their code of conduct was too rigid? Whatever your thoughts may be, we would love to hear them in the comments below. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of our future videos. We've got a lot more interesting things to come. Thanks for watching.